filling up. So it is Do the Robot, our third and final installment. It's been crazy. Like, I don't know, I remember we were starting this thing up back in the early spring, and now it's like we're heading into summer. I don't know where the time went, but we've been having a lot of fun just showcasing Pittsburgh robotics companies, a couple Columbus robotics companies. I think right after our show last time, Path Robotics announced like a $65 million venture round. So I think that was clearly attributable to our show, right? I mean, so you appear on the show, get a $65 million investment round. So anyhow, I'm just kidding. I digress. Everyone, this is Jonathan Kersting, and I'm hanging out with my boss and CEO of the Pittsburgh Tech Council, Audrey Russo. Audrey, it's always fun to be hosting these shows with you.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. Glad to be here. I have a different kind of background going on today, but if you're not here live with us, you won't know the better.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to be here to talk to these companies. It's great.
Very good stuff. And I think last time we totally forgot to tell people just a little bit about the Pittsburgh Technology Council and why we like hanging out with folks in Columbus so much. And if people don't know, the Tech Council, we were founded back in 1983. We're a trade association. We got a little over 1,000 members, and people belong to us to get visibility by doing shows like this or appearing on our radio show Tech Vibe or in our magazines. We help them with business development. We help them with all things talent, whether that's finding talent, making sure your talent stays with you by having great benefits and so forth. And we do a lot of advocacy. And we just realized over the pandemic that Columbus is like our next door neighbor. There's some great stuff going on in Columbus. We've been hanging out with Ben Blankera for the past year, and we got to learn more and more about Columbus. And now that like things are kind of easing up on the COVID stuff, I can't wait to visit Columbus and hang out with some of the people in the companies and get a better feel for what's on the ground there. But at the end of the day, we just feel like there's so much opportunity between our regions, and it's so much fun for us to kind of connect people whenever and however we can. And Audrey, I think today's show, I'm just so excited because we have two very different robotics companies hanging out with us, but they have one thing in common. They're kicking butt. Simple as that. And we're going to be talking to Gecko Robotics today and Locomation. Both these companies, Audrey, they blow my mind. Every time I learn about what they're up to, I'm like, oh my God. And I say only in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and we have a lot of love for Columbus because we're going to be working on the Hyperloop.
Yes.
And we imagine that Columbus will be a suburb of Pittsburgh pretty soon.
Exactly. And I just think it's awesome stuff. I just think there's so much opportunity. And also just to remind anyone out there, I'll put a link in the chat in a little bit. We did a really cool issue of our TEQ News magazine where we explored some of the synergies between our two regions because we think it's really cool stuff. You can put a nice big old picture of Columbus on the cover of our magazine because we think it's pretty rad. So I don't know, Audrey, we should get this thing kicked off and introduce each of our guests. I think we should have each guest just obviously just give a little bit about their background and give the elevator pitch for their companies. And then we're going to jump into each company, explore them for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then talk about some of the common challenges and opportunities that both companies are exploring. So Ed, let's start with you. Ed Reiner from Gecko Robotics. You guys are moving so fast, I can't keep up with you. You might be moving as fast as one of Chetan's 18-wheelers that's being autonomously driven. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we're trying to keep up. We're trying to keep up with the 18-wheelers. No, it's been a wild and fun ride. So when, a little bit on Gecko's history, we were founded by Jake Lucerian and Troy Demmer. They actually got into the Y Combinator out in California. But ultimately wanted to move back home, and home for them was Pittsburgh. And we knew that there was an opportunity to really help foster a great community in this area of robotics companies. And so after receiving some seed round funding, we moved back to Pittsburgh. That was actually when I joined the company. It was right after Y Combinator in 2016 as part of the founding team of engineers. And we built our first robot, a wall climbing robot for the power industry, ultimately deploying non-destructive testing inside of boilers to start, high pressure steam vessels that ultimately needed to stop exploding to make sure that power can continue to be generated. Since then, our robotic systems have really become really modular, able to climb on a very diverse set of infrastructure assets. And our mission is a simple one, but a really noble one. It's ultimately to be able to protect some of our world's infrastructure most critical assets. And there's just so much capital that gets put into building amazing infrastructure, but nearly not enough that's put into maintaining it. And we see that sometimes in our roadways inside of Pittsburgh. And I know we have a couple companies working on that as well. But ultimately, the equalizer is technology and data. And that's what we're set out to find through our robotic platform. So we're really excited to be part of the Pittsburgh Technology Council and many of the other groups that are represented here.
So Ed,
yeah, go ahead.
what did you why don't you tell everyone, what did people do before Gecko?
Yeah. So and honestly, it hasn't stopped. There are still companies out there that are doing very manual inspection services. Unfortunately, it's one of those micro, dangerous, and dirty jobs that gets described all the time. They're hanging from rope axis. They're building really tall scaffolding. Lots of unfortunate casualties and injuries from doing this manual inspection services. And it's pretty slow and monotonous work. Ultimately, they don't always have the right amount of data collected to be able to make the right decisions on how they're going to spend their CapEx and maintenance budgets to make sure that their system's up and running efficiently. So there's still a lot of manual inspections happening today. And there's not enough of the robotic inspection services being provided that ultimately close that gap that we just talked about.
But it has to make you wonder, right? Like you just think about what are inspections really like? I'm not putting down any of these other companies, but when you get into the automation of things and you're doing things that perhaps many people shouldn't be doing anymore, how are these inspections really going? So that's sort of a Socratic kind of question. But what about, and we'll talk to our guest, our founder at Locomation in a minute, but what about all the money now that's coming out of Washington in terms of attending to quote unquote infrastructure? And I know that's a wide definition. It's not necessarily the things that all of us are thinking about. What are you guys thinking about right now in terms of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, it's a very diverse landscape of opportunities and problems to be solved. Right now, we're fairly focused on a limited scope of that, but we want to be able to expand into some of those other areas. But yeah, out of DC, they're talking about our infrastructure grades, not only in the US, but globally. It's just, our scores continue to get worse and worse over time, despite us thinking about and talking about these problems. We really need more people trying to solve some of these problems rather than just talking about them. And that's one of the things that we're really opportunistic that we are going to be impactful in solving some of those problems here at Gecko.
And then how many people are working at Gecko right now today?
Yeah,
so every week. Jake,
it's hard. Don't quote me on this because it's probably going to be wrong very quickly, but I think we're well over 130 people today. And I'm giving you a round number. I think we're several people over that, but we've got a big hiring class. We just brought in our intern class this week as well, and so it's really exciting to see all the new faces, all of the excited people that are going to contribute to our mission.
So how about our other guest here?
That's Dr. Chetan. Yeah, man.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm always looking forward to these get-togethers, my favorite activities. I'm Chetan Meris, the co-founder and CEO of Locomation. For people who don't know Locomation or don't remember all that much, maybe a 30-second elevator pitch.
Yes, do it.
Give us 60 seconds if you want. You can double it, and we'll still be.
I'll try to do 45, just to hit the middle. Locomation is developing autonomous driving technologies. That's the broad definition. Our near-term focus is on freight transportation and semi-trucks. So we are in the self-driving truck business. We also have a staged or an incremental approach. So we are starting this automation journey with human-guided autonomous convoys, building one self-driving truck, putting that self-driving truck behind a human-driven truck initially. And over time, with more data, with more exposure, and with more analysis, hoping that we will expand the responsibilities of the autonomy, and one day the truck will just drive itself with no human involvement. How is it done now? If that's going to be the follow-on question, I'm sure you are hearing more and more about an increased driver shortage. That's been a real pain point. We are not talking about optionality. We are not talking about the convenience. We are talking about the real pain point in the supply chain. And everything we do in our normal lives is touched by this shortage. Just remember, it's not maybe directly translatable, but in the early days of the pandemic, we couldn't get toilet paper. That was because our supply chain was under significant pressure. We got caught off guard. We couldn't match the demand with the limited supply, and as a result, even some basic materials we couldn't distribute on time. And that's a trend. That's only going to get worse if we don't do anything about that. Truck driving is a very demanding job, and unfortunately, it's not paying nearly as well for all the demands and all the tolls that it takes on the lifestyle of people. As a result, less and less people are inclined to come and become truck drivers. So we have a shrinking and aging pool of skilled drivers. Automation is here to fill in the gaps and basically make the supply match the demands, increasing demands. But it cannot happen overnight, and it's not a big bang, all and one and done kind of operation. It's just the inertia of the real world. So at Locomation, maybe a little bit different than some other colleagues, friends, and competitors, no matter, whatever you want to call them. We believe in this progression, and we believe in this. Just make some progress, start from somewhere, get to the real world, have an excuse, have a profitable excuse to be out in the real world, so that we can learn from the world, ingest the information, and make the technology better in a safe way.
So, but, you know, Carnegie Mellon, and maybe people who are on this call and people who will listen to this, they probably don't understand that or know that 40 years ago, I mean, it's really, I think we're on our 40th year, right? Could you talk about that?
Yes.
There?
Yeah, I think it is very safe. It's also a very proud thing to say that Carnegie Mellon is the birthplace of autonomous vehicles.
Right.
We've been at the forefront of it.
But trucks.
In general, all the vehicles, including trucks, including mine-hauling trucks, passenger vehicles, including Mars rovers, CPUs, innovations live in Mars. Hard to believe that, but so we are a brainchild, and we are very proud of that fact that we are a brainchild of Carnegie Mellon. We are a product of Pittsburgh. We are working hard. We have an incredible team, and we are pouring in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But we are also standing on the shoulders of the giants.
Right. And, you know, when I moved to Pittsburgh, it was 20 years ago, and people said, oh, we've been working on autonomous trucks for 2 decades.
2 decades, yeah.
And I remember going, 2 decades autonomous trucks, and people thought that the folks at Carnegie Mellon were crazy. And in Spanish, they would say, loca en la cabeza. That's what they would say. And I remember meeting the people down there and just being blown away about the vision. And it wasn't necessarily about the shortage of trucks, but they knew that there would be a time that a person like Jonathan Kersting was not going to be a trucker. You know, he was.
I have my aspirations though, Audrey. I have my aspirations. And
well, you still could be, you might be, but I mean, the thing is, in terms of health and in terms of lifestyle, and everything that Chetan's talking about is really something that also drives, quote unquote, the dynamics of this autonomy. And that's something people don't really talk about. And it's the same thing even with Gecko. If you think about the kinds of repetitive work and the kind of, I don't want to say shrifting, but sort of short diligence in terms of doing those kinds of inspections that we've all taken for granted, that pen and pencil and, you know, whatever that might be, it's more imperative. The other thing that you've mentioned that I really want you both to maybe talk about a little bit is that in publicly held companies today, 2 things their boards are really, really talking about outside of making sure that they have an inclusive and diverse workforce. One is, what is their supply chain? What does that look like? What is their supply chain? And second is security. So, you know, both of those things touch both of the companies that you're in. So it would be cool to talk about that. You know, you're not publicly held companies yet, but you
give it time, give it time.
But you get to connect with those companies who are. So can you talk about that? Because I think, to me, that's part of the most exciting pieces of the work that both of you are doing. Or you could tell me that I'm crazy. which
I think, Audrey, I think you're spot on. I think that the first one in particular is something that our clients and customers are always talking about with us is how is their supply chain going to be affected if one of their critical infrastructure assets is up and running when they need it the most. Using Chitin's example of toilet paper, we work with pulp and paper organizations that were trying to keep up with the demand of making toilet paper. And a single pressure vessel, a single water tank, a single piece of their equipment that was down was affecting their ability to generate supply that was needed at that time. And so that's one of the very important things. And yeah, it is a common. And I'll add a third actually beyond just the security inside of our industries. There is a big push for just this, quote unquote, the digital transformation and how do we become a cloud company. And there's that piece of security that they have to be thinking about that entire time. But in the inspection world, you're absolutely right. A lot of those inspections are still being written on pen and paper. A lot of the reports that go through their compliance systems and sit in what's called their IDMS or their inspection data management system is actually just a PDF report sitting there in the cloud. And that's really hard to leverage unless you pull that back down, read it, take handwritten notes, and it's kind of creating an additional problem on top of that if they're not able to access some of the data, the lower level data, the ultrasonic signals, where the robot was, the temperature on a particular part of the asset, all referenced in 3D space in the digital cloud. If they don't have all of those things, the way that they're going to ultimately be able to generate better outcomes, the way that they're going to be able to have better sustainability, the way that they're going to actually lower their carbon footprint will never change if they continue to live inside of that world. And so that is one of the pieces that I think technology can really start to push for. And yeah, we have to go through a lot of these additional security layers because we're moving some of their data to their cloud. Some of this some of the analytic tools have to be air gapped and be containerized so that they can actually be run on their on-prem cloud rather than out in the ether. And so there's a lot of different technical challenges that we work with from a client to client basis, but I think you're absolutely right. Those three are definitely the big three and constantly talked about as we continue to talk with our customers on how we're going to help them improve in those ways.
But it's also part of the most valuable part of the work that you're building in solving that problem. The same thing with Locomation. Yeah. So what do you think, Shetton? You think I was right in terms of what you're hearing?
Yeah, it is spot on. Absolutely. So on the supply chain part, our direct customers who are trucking companies, inevitably they will have to change the way they think about scheduling, dispatching, handling this day-to-day operations around autonomous trucks, even when there is still some human involvement around it. So that requires different playbooks, and someone has to come up with those playbooks. And nobody actually knows what should be on those playbooks. Right. So while we are still a couple of quarters away from actually rolling out the first incarnation of our technology, we are already in like neck-deep conversations and hand-to-hand working with our customers, figuring out how it will look like. Because we understand there's inertia in real world. Everything is gonna take some time. We're gonna try a bunch of things. A majority of them won't work. Some of them will work. In each case, we will learn some lessons and move on. So we are front loading a lot of activities around how the future supply chain should look like, how it's gonna look as the technology progresses from no automation to human guided automation to eventual full automation. So that's the supply chain part of it. The security part of it, there is a traditional cybersecurity element which Ed touched on. How now all of a sudden these things are going to generate a lot of data. How are we going to secure that data? How are we going to make sure that it's the right best-in-class cybersecurity protections around the data is there? But in our particular case, we also have physical assets. We will have tens of thousands of trucks with automation capabilities out there in the wild. What it means from a physical security point of view. And there is that's when cybersecurity meets with physical security to form cyber physical security. And that's relatively new field. A lot of research is being done. A lot of practical progress is being made, but ultimately this is not battle tested yet because we don't have tens of or hundreds of thousands of highly connected and highly automated vehicles out there in the world. So we are basically inventing or figuring out as we go. But again, we are front loading a lot of those activities several quarters ahead of time so that by the time the technology is actually ready to be deployed, we at least will have the version 1 of these provisions in place so that we can start deploying, start learning with the systems from there on.
And I mean, how many people year over year decide they want to become truckers?
Oh, I'm sure there's a statistic around that. It's not enough.
Not enough, no matter what.
Lots of turnover there as well, too, I think is one of the main problems.
I can offer that statistic because I know that
there's a lot of turnover.
Yeah, a typical medium to large size carrier usually experiences over 100% turnover a year.
Oh my gosh, turnover. And does that mean they go to other companies or do they drop out?
It's both actually. For the more experienced, more skilled drivers, it's usually roaming around. Whoever gives a better signing bonus or so, they just basically make their rounds. And for the young workforce coming into the profession, there are actually fascinating statistics around majority of the young people starting to work on their commercial driver license training quit in the first couple of weeks. If they don't quit in the first couple of weeks, the second cohort usually drops off in the first 6 months. If whoever can make it to the first 6 months are usually in the business for at least a couple of years.
Wow, but it is so intimidating. It's such an intimidating, when you think about it, it's so intimidating to actually drive, and not only the physical demand and harm that it does to your life.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Have you ever driven an 18-wheeler yourself?
I'm not allowed to.
You need a CDL check.
I need to get my CDL. Whenever I can shave off maybe 6 weeks of my time, I'm actually intending to get one, but hey, it did not happen yet.
Okay, well, I would like Jonathan to be on a truck.
I'll take the class with you, Chet. I'll take the class with you. We'll do it.
We'll buddy up. We'll team up.
Absolutely.
You can do the next episode live from the truck. You too.
That would be great because it's an intimidating, and yeah, that is. Can you imagine running a company, Ed, having 100% turnover?
No, that would be. I mean, our TA team is already under enough stress right now. Our talent acquisition team is as it is. I think if we had 100% turnover. Yeah.
And so here's the thing for both of you. Everyone says there's this whole, not everyone, people who aren't inside of the worlds that we live in are saying, oh, they're getting rid of jobs, they're eradicating jobs. And, I chuckle all the time and say, no, they're creating opportunities for jobs that no one wants to do or should do. Yeah. And that's what I would say about both of your companies.
Let's automate it, man. Let's automate it.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting because we are actually hiring a lot of the people that previously did these manual inspections to now take care of our robots or to deploy the robots. They know where they need to deploy the system. They understand the fundamentals of ultrasonics.
They're probably
are the specialists. So they're actually joining our workforce and utilizing the brand new technologies that will ultimately, take them out of that sky climber, that will take them off of the rope access and keep them safely on the ground with their hard hat on and able to deploy these robots onto different assets and then maintain them. They're learning new skills. They're learning how to crack open and actually interact with the electronic systems and data acquisition systems as we continue to develop our systems.
They're probably thrilled.
Yeah, they're part of our we love to. They're one of the first lines of suggesting, hey, this is what I'm seeing when I'm actually running this system. How can we make it that much better? And so they're changing. Previously they were handed a handheld meter and they never interacted with the engineer that ultimately designed that for them as the user, as the customer. We're bringing in a lot of the people that ultimately want to be part of this great innovation and adding autonomy to this, making their lives better. And actually giving them back the ability to analyze the data rather than the backbreaking labor, the dangerous labor that makes them inefficient at what they're doing.
Yeah, we have to debunk this myth. It's just getting ridiculous. What about, Chetan, what about, do you ever get truckers that actually come to work for you yet?
Of course, I mean, we have a growing team of very experienced drivers, safety drivers, helping us understand the intricacies of the driving
So
job,
great.
helping us test and validate the technology. And the whole are we eliminating jobs myth, we are transforming jobs.
Right,
And
exactly.
there's actually a valid concern around, okay, so the machines will come and all of a sudden there won't be any jobs to do. But today, we don't have enough people to do those jobs
Right,
anyway, so
exactly.
they're for a reason. And even if we could go really fast and we can magically solve full autonomy today, it will take over 20 years to replace all the trucks on the roads. And we are nowhere near that. So we are actually very, very confident that no truck driver driving today will lose their jobs to an automated truck.
Right, right. I mean, that's evident. We've got to do a better job, Jonathan, helping on this particular area in terms of robotics, because we hear it so often and it's so exhausting to try to explain it after each one of those, come at you and say, yeah, but you're getting rid of this. Like, no, these are jobs no one wants,
I like that.
no one should be doing. Yeah, it's transformative. So and so both of you have had investors, right? Have had some outside investors because you couldn't really bootstrap these companies, right? These aren't things that you could bootstrap for very long. So that's pretty exciting, and that's probably demanding as well, right? It's one thing to get money, right? But it's the other, it's to how are you going to use it? Are you under a lot of pressure?
No, I wouldn't describe it as pressure right now. I think we've done a really nice job, and I think the Pittsburgh area has supported us as well in finding the right partners for our business, the ones that are ultimately going to come alongside us rather than maybe dangle a carrot in front of us or crack the whip behind us too often. They're really coming alongside us and talking about that Columbus piece and kind of what Gecko's doing as well. Our last round of funding just before actually the pandemic hit was with Drive Capital as our lead, who's based in Columbus. And Drive Capital has done an amazing job of opening doors in the Columbus area. Many of the Columbus companies, I mean, I know they're working with Duolingo in Pittsburgh, but they also have Olive AI and Root. I've gotten to interact with many of their engineering leaders, many of their team as they were going through different growing pains, as they were trying to figure out how to ultimately innovate with their customers. They've had, great stories to help us avoid a couple potholes along the way as we continue to grow our organization. And so I really do think that, there's this budding relationship between companies, both in Pittsburgh and Columbus, but it's amazing that a investor, a venture capitalist can also, create a lot of those really great human ties to ultimately help build businesses.
We had Drive on our Business as Usual show a few weeks ago, and we were just like super pumped with them. And they mentioned obviously Gecko is one of their investments, and they invested in Path as well too. So they've got a really cool portfolio. It's got to be fun to be part of it. Yeah,
it's been amazing to have them as part of our team.
And so, Chetan, you've also gotten a bunch of funding pretty recently in the middle of COVID.
We've raised a bunch of dollars from a pretty good base of investors, actually, a mixture of Pittsburgh and in general Northeast-based funds and some Silicon Valley funds, as well as some international funds. I have investors from Japan, I have investors from Europe, I even have investors from Turkey. It's my home country. I haven't mentioned before. So the pressure part is very interesting. I don't feel extra pressure because of the venture capital dollars. I mean, I feel pressure because as a CEO of the company, I'm responsible and I'm in charge of protecting the benefits of every single shareholder. And every single teammate at Locomation actually owns a piece of the company. So I'm accountable and I basically report to all of them in some sense. And from the very beginning, especially in the early stages, maybe that's a good takeaway or advice for other entrepreneur colleagues. We always look fundraising as a team building exercise. It's not just money in the door. It's all about what else the investors can enable. And Ed gave a bunch of good examples around how Drive Capital was instrumental. Especially local investors with local connections, local ties can be very, very transformative. Global investors can also be very transformative in different parts. So we always look at it as, okay, so we are expanding our team, and some team members happen to be bringing their checkbooks along. So they'll help us paying the bills until we figure out this profitability aspect of it. So there's no extra pressure. There's a lot of value in especially early stage investors. You have to pick and choose very, very wisely. That's a very case by case situation. I can't give like golden advice that will work in every single situation, but it is very similar to a long-term relationship or marriage. You have to really do your diligence of like who are you partnering up with, because it's most likely that you are going to be working very closely together for the next 5 to 10 years.
Very cool. I'd love to give some props to Grove City, because when everyone thinks of Pittsburgh and robotics, they think of Carnegie Mellon, of course, because Carnegie Mellon, without a doubt, like you just assume every robotics company comes out of there, but that's not the case for Gecko. I know Jake went to Grove City. And did you go to Grove City as well too?
No, I know that we do have a great Grove City family here. I went to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore.
Nice.
And linked up with Jake later in life, but we love that network there, and the engineers that come out of there are really hardworking, really intelligent people with really great values. It's a phenomenal school, and I would really, anybody that's on the call that's looking for hiring talent, look for Grove City talent, because it is great, just like our CMU and Pitt students and many of the other schools in this area. But yeah, Jake and Troy both came out of Grove City for their undergrad. Troy did come and went into was at CMU for a while for his MBA, but ultimately, they linked up and started what is Gecko, and we've hired many exceptional engineers, business and salespeople out of Grove City since then.
I just feel like having like Grove City just strengthens, Pittsburgh's robotics, especially when you add in Pitt's engineering, and then you add in some of the medicine even as well too. I just think that makes it a really big straight ecosystem for it all. I just love that story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's it like? Is this the first time, Ed, that you've been in a startup?
So I did, it's my second. So I had a failed startup on my own with a couple other college buddies, learned a lot of great life lessons, learned just how much you had to commit to the process. I worked the big corporate side before coming to Gecko, and I was like, I need to get back into a startup. And luckily when I was moving to and looking in the Pittsburgh region at all of the robotics companies here, it brought me here. It brought me from one of those, one of those Pittsburgh converts. And so it's powerful. And I think what we're doing here is amazing. I love being part of this community. It's really exciting to see where Gecko's come. But yeah, it was my second startup, much more successful story thus far. And hopefully we can continue on that success. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but it's been a really exciting ride.
Ed, what were some of your lessons from your first startup that maybe kind of guide you in this?
So I mean, that was a mobile application. It was at the height of kind of the location-based services that mobile brought to the world. How do you ultimately leverage your social networks and all of the things that are going on in the community to be able to say and suggest all of the events that might be happening based on your location, based on your interests, etc. Ultimately, and that was something that I was bootstrapping for a while with a couple of really, really talented engineers. They really taught me talent's not everything. One, those are some of the most talented people that I've ever worked with, and it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of heart, and not everything. You need a little luck on your side as well. I would say Gecko has had a little bit of luck. It's not without a lot of hard work and a lot of really great customers that have ultimately partnered with us, but it's not everything. And so I learned a lot. I learned you definitely had to roll up your sleeves from time to time. There's going to be a fire that proceeded to happen at night. You thought you had perfect code, or you thought you had dealt with all of the intricacies, but once it's out into the world, you really start to learn what's working and what's not working.
Right.
That was one of the other life lessons, especially getting back into robotics, which I really wanted to do after college, was to really see your system out in the environment it's ultimately going to exist in. It's one thing to build a lab robot. It's another thing for it to work flawlessly in the environment that it's designed for. And that's a really hard challenge because you don't want to push it out there too early and have something that's going to fail in front of your customers all the time, or cause some type of catastrophic accident and those types of things. So you really need to partner with the right people, take the right risks, make sure that you're not taking too many risks, etc. But I would say I learned it takes a lot of hard work, but hard work isn't everything. Is probably the biggest life lesson that I learned from that first startup.
I saw Chet shaking his head there when he talks about taking your product out. He's got
What
an
about
18
you?
wheeler there, two of them. That's
Yeah,
gotta be a
that-
little scary, huh?
I couldn't agree more. This is my first full-time startup endeavor, but fifth startup overall. The others were a little bit like side hustles. Learned a lot, really a lot. A couple of lessons learned is not all problems are worth solving. And when you come from a technology background,
that's such good. Yes.
That's a constant ego fight that you have to have against yourself, like the guy in the mirror every
Right.
morning, because you want to do more things, you want to do more technology, and you have a tendency to believe that technology is going to solve things. But running a business is a very different ball game. So that's not rule number one. Rule number two is survivorship bias is real. We all can talk about how wonderful things are for our companies right now and how beautiful we are executing, etc. Majority of that is definitely hard work. We all work very, very hard, but a significant part of that is maybe luck. Good timing, good too early, too late. Anything can kill an otherwise perfect idea. And when we look back and try to explain everything with our experience of present, we tend to give ourselves a little bit more credit in areas maybe we didn't have that much control over.
But there's the luck factor. I would agree with you. And running a small business like at the Tech Council, there is a luck factor that we definitely have internally. The question is, what's the weighted value of that luck factor, right? What is it? We've had years where it's been, wow, that was luck, right, Jonathan?
It's like, oh my God.
I mean, oh my God. And then we look back and, we pontificate about how
we planned it out that way.
We planned that out. It was, it was there, but it was totally something that either got dumped in our lap but there is something around credibility that you build up. So you have amassed some competency that's luck.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on it. I think over time you start to kind of create a little bit more luck, right? You can start to create more opportunities for luck. You can create the ability as you continue to expand your customer base to realize, oh, we're not even, the first couple customers have led us to this customer that's actually talking about the problem that we need to solve that will change the landscape of the industry. You kind of start to create more and more of those opportunities, which then you can look back and say, well, some of them were lucky, but there was probably a lot of hard work to create that opportunity that might ultimately be lucky and transform how you're thinking about your business. So I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a certain amount of weight, and I would say earlier on when you don't have as many opportunities, don't have as many at-bats for those baseball fans out there, the number of at-bats, you better take advantage of them because the luck will ultimately run out if you don't roll up your sleeves.
It's really amazing when you think about the convergence of where we are in history. Right? Like when we reflect back into this moment of history, and all the things that were happening, it would make sense that both of your solutions happened at this time. So is that luck? Or was it because there was gravitational pull that there aren't enough people driving? There's a lot of research and work that's gone into autonomy. And, you know, the work that both of your companies are solving have workforce issues.
I'm
Right?
voting for gravitational pull on this one.
Yeah, I think the timing was right for the kinds of technologies that we are developing, and the flip side is also true. I mean, I'm sure the same with Gecko. That Locomation, we decided to start Locomation because at that point we got the conviction that we could solve this problem. Maybe that was not the case 10 years or 20 years ago. Maybe it was bound to be like a lab experiment, but a couple of years ago, we got the conviction that, okay, so now we have the ingredients. We can actually solve a meaningful part of this problem in a relatively short time frame so that we can actually become a real business with real products and real revenue streams. If we didn't have that conviction, we wouldn't have started Locomation at that time. Of course, you can say that, I mean, maybe we just like lucked out and got that conviction. Maybe I'm sure there is a little bit of that too, but we at least did our homework part well, did a really meticulous analysis on what problem to go after, when to go after that, when is the right time to pull the trigger, and basically jumped in when we cleared that bar of conviction.
So what do you think the next, here we are, it's May. So what do you think that, what are you going to be telling us by the end of December?
Yeah, something good. Something good.
You want us to give all the secrets away now? Huh?
No, you don't have to give it all away.
That's all.
No, I kid. No, I mean, I think we are hoping to continue to grow our business. We are hiring like crazy right now. So anybody that's, you know, really looking for their next challenge, I really encourage you to not just look at our current careers page offerings. You know, our talent team has to prioritize just like our engineering team does. And we have a whole list of roles that we want to fill by the end of this year. And so that list is going to continuously be updated over Q2, Q3, Q4, and we're really looking to grow each part of our business, from the engineering side, the R&D efforts, our operations, our sales, our marketing, and product teams, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really open to continue to utilize our investment dollars to continue to double down on what we're doing today. But beyond that, our big push for this year is really to figure out how we're going to continue to leverage our data for maximum impact. And that actually involves some of the things beyond just the robots we're providing, but ultimately some of the solutions we're providing inside of our SaaS offerings, our software as a service, our data as a service offerings. That's a big challenge for us. We're hiring a lot of software engineers to help us solve this problem, both at our customer sites, so people that are actually deployed understanding the problems firsthand, but also on our platform and product teams, infrastructure teams that are based down in Pittsburgh, Austin, Houston, et cetera. And so we're really growing this organization. And I'll say that we are starting to lean in on some of those global opportunities as well. How do we ultimately start to perform this worldwide, which will open up a whole new set of growing pains, I am sure.
Right.
We need a group of people that are ultimately going to be devoted to that mission and help us solve some of those global problems as well.
So what about Shetton? What about you?
We are growing at a neck-breaking pace as well. We are right around 50 people now. That's a significant jump from 20 we've had.
Right.
I remember when you were like 5 people, man. What the heck?
And we intend to continue. We are projecting that we will be around or over 100 people by the end of this year.
Oh my
and
God.
we will continue hitting our milestones in all different dimensions. Continue to build and validate the technology because we really want to get to a point where we are deploying, starting to deploy autonomous convoys by the end of next year, and continue to build our ecosystem, which means a lot of partnerships in different dimensions, technical partnerships, regulatory partnerships, social partnerships, and of course, business elements, improve our increase our traction. We actually have a couple of announcements coming down the pipeline, so we will probably announcing more customers and more business traction in the next couple of months. Very busy, but very exciting. Healthy years ahead of us.
Love hearing that, man. That is so exciting.
So what about hiring? What, do you have some hiring key roles right now? Either of you?
Yes, we probably have about 30 jobs posted,
Freezing.
mainly hiring in Pittsburgh. So just like Ed, I encourage anyone who's bold enough, who's excited, and who's opinionated around how autonomous vehicles should be developed and deployed, who actually has a almost seeking a closure here. So we've been at this problem for like 4 decades in the research setup, almost a decade with the private fundings. We need to see some tangible results. If other people are feeling that kind of itch, that kind of urge, I encourage them to reach out to us, even if they don't see a direct fitting role right now. Our recruiting teams are also hard at work. We are constantly trying to define new roles, chart out our organizational growth, and see what kind of new skills can come in and fit into this big picture and make us a little bit stronger. So we are here waiting for new teammates. As I said, we are 50 now, and we are going to be 100 by the end of the year. So 50 future Locomation teammates are among us that either they don't know that they are going to be at Locomation yet, or we don't know that they are going to be at Locomation yet.
I'll throw out one key role that we've been at for a little while that's been really tough to find, and maybe this will ultimately connect us to the right person. But in the world of autonomy and autonomous vehicles specifically, I feel like a lot of effort has been really put into the role or the competency of perception, knowing what's around you, how you're going to avoid it, all of those things. With our solution, although that is important, although that's part of our piece of what we're doing, leaning in on that true localization piece over time and how you data map. How we data map is really, really critical to be able to follow up defects and take action on those defects inside of 3D space. So the perception piece is important, but we're really looking for a localization and data mapping expert, especially in the space of something like motion capturing devices. VR is very applicable, but inside of the space of GPS-denied locations, inside of the space where range is really affected, where tracheometry is maybe kind of the option that we go for, there's a lot of really interesting pieces of technical expertise we're looking for in that space, and leaning more that way than the perception side right now. And it's been really hard to find a subject matter expert that really has the chops to help us there, and we're really looking for a very unique profile in that regard.
Fascinating stuff, man, all the way around. Audrey, I don't think we underbilled this when I said these are two kick-ass robotics companies in Pittsburgh. It's just like, man, this is making Pittsburgh proud. And I just think we had such an awesome conversation. I know we got a couple minutes left for some kind of final thoughts. And I know we have to spend 5 minutes for the poll at the end for the folks that attended. Anything we didn't cover from either of you guys that you think is really important for people to know about your companies or just the robotics industry in general, or Pittsburgh as a robotics place, or connecting Pittsburgh to Columbus, any of the above?
I think collectively we all should do a slightly better job in communicating how unique the talent and the history of robotics and automation in Pittsburgh is. It's not just the Carnegie Mellon heritage, that's obviously a very big part of it, but in general, that's the DNA of this. Hard work and high technology is in the DNA of this city. We should do a better job in properly propagating that.
We're trying. So true. But I think we have to debunk the myth about jobs. I think there's a tension that happens there, and we just need to continue to have a conversation that talks over that just debunks that, because there is that like pull that I mentioned earlier where people just don't understand. And as long as both of you are creating jobs that didn't even exist a couple of years ago. You didn't
Exactly.
have titles for it. You didn't even have titles for them, right? You didn't even think about that. So that's the piece that we've got to move with that kind of nimbleness in conveying. Who would have thought truckers would be working with an autonomous trucking company? I mean, that seems like dissonant, right? Who would
Sounds like sci-fi.
right? Right. Who would have thought that?
Yeah, I really think we need to look at automation as another form of technology and really kind of think about it as the Iron Man suit rather than kind of
Right.
the system that's going to take over and destroy
Right.
us all as a human race. I really do believe when we look back, I mean, look back at the Stone Age. There were people that's job were to make the fire, right, and cook. We don't think about making fire all day long anymore because we have matches, because we have gas
Right.
stoves, because we've added technology that doesn't take up the labor of building a fire all day long. And automation is going to do a very similar thing. Robotics is going to do a very similar thing where we're going to be able to flip these things on, and our job will be to maintain them, to be creative in ways that we haven't yet been afforded to do so. You know, there will be new opportunities that will take new skills because I don't make fire anymore, and I'm happy that I don't need to do that anymore. But I'm part of the age that is ultimately going to help define some of this robotic solutioning, and we'll be on to the next set of problems as a human race because that's what we're really, really good at into the future.
I
Good
agree.
stuff.
Stetton, you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I still chip my own wheel, but maybe I should move away from that a little bit as well. Don't have it die hard. No, I mean, that's really, I really love the Iron Man suit versus the Terminator coming, a killer robot coming after us. It's going to be a symbiosis for a really long time. And I mean, if I have to give a concrete example from the automotive world, when we first came up with the automotive ideas, you had to have this like crank, you had to jump start your engine by hand.
Right.
Now we are just pressing a button and it just starts by itself, and we don't see an ego issue there. Similarly, we used to have this manual transmission. Some of us still have some ego issues.
I like the manual transmission.
Yeah, like, exactly. But I mean, I don't. My car just like decides when and how to shift gears,
Right.
and does it better than I could ever do, and I'm fine with that. So it's a spectrum of delegation. As the machines get better and better and prove that they are safer or more comfortable or more optimal in doing certain parts of the job,
right,
I think it's inevitable to delegate those parts to machines so that we can actually focus on the parts where we can make the most difference.
Right, but remember, when I say I like, you know, a manual shift car, that is not driven by demand of work.
Right.
Right. So you can't, you know, that is something fun and that's a sidebar. But when what we're talking about now is propelling an economy. And so, you know, again, I think you've really hit home that Jonathan and I need to work on better articulating this whole thing about debunking these myths about work and opportunities. And it's exciting. I'm glad to see this in my lifetime. I'm glad to see it. I didn't think that some of this robot stuff would happen in my lifetime, but you know, I think that all these pandemics and now epidemics and things like that are just forcing us to accelerate, just like the digitization that occurred. People had these like 5-year plans of digitization, and then it like happened in 5 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Oh,
So yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. We're your big cheerleaders here. And we're glad to be able to talk about it with Columbus, because I do think there's a lot of synergies there. And all my Columbus jokes I will take back, because I mean it. I think there's a lot of synergies.
Good stuff. Well, what a good conversation. I think got about 3 minutes left. I know we got to put this poll up, so I think we should probably call it a wrap. Can't thank you guys enough for being part of this and just giving our viewers a little taste of some of the great work happening here in Pittsburgh. How can we spread that to Columbus a little bit and kind of get this going? That's yet to be seen, but we want to make that happen. That's for sure. Thanks for being part of this show today, guys. Just love it.
Can I ask a question while people are filling out the poll?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Do it.
So like, I don't know how close you guys are to, but I was in my mind, I was thinking like, what's the what's the legal route that you have to go down in order to get these things, approved? Because like I don't know as much about Tesla, but like something in the human brain is like small car. Okay, yeah, it's lots of legality, but residential. But then like making the transition to trucks, very heavy commercial, like that's usually when people are like, oh, it's super heavily regulated, yada yada yada. Like, how's that been?
Yeah, United States is doing a better job than the rest of the world there in creating regulatory awareness, but not heavily, like prematurely applying heavy regulation to basically cripple the innovation part. So it's a very interesting, delicate balance there. As of today, there's tremendous support and momentum in the regulatory landscape. So when we have the technology ready to go with some safety evidence around it, the regulatory support for at least initial deployments in maybe certain regions, in maybe certain particular applications is already there. Of course, it can get better, it can get wider. Eventually, maybe it's going to be federally regulated so that there's a whole standard around it, etc. But these can also progress alongside the technology. So we already have the initial green light to go and deploy when the technology clears the safety and reliability box.
Oh, there's already standards in place that
There
like,
are,
once you
there
guys pass these tests, then you're good to go. Oh, okay, I didn't think that. That's
But there's big hurdles. We worked really hard for a long time, but there's still big hurdles, which is part of what Locomation is, part of paving the way. No pun intended, but.
Well, I guess yeah, passing the tests and actually making it safe is, that's the hard part.
Right.
Actually,
Any feedback?
actually doing it.
Any feedback from the poll that you're going to share before we sign off?
No, I mean, we got 9 out of 10 people. I think that's good.
Oh, okay. All right.
Good stuff. Well, thanks for being
Great.
part of it. Once again, love the conversation. We're going to keep having these conversations. Simple as that. You guys are the best. And please visit their websites, check out what they're doing. And like they're hiring, they're innovating, they're in Pittsburgh. We think it's rad.
Thank you so much for having us. Wonderful organization. Great to see you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Great.
Always good seeing you,
Great.
Chen.
Yes, thank you for
you
everything.
both.
Thanks for putting it together, and thanks for the invite.
Ed,
Yeah,
you're the best,
great.
man. Be good. Tell everyone back at Gecko we said, what's up, man?
All right, we'll do.
Great. Thank
Definitely.
you. Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Bye.